In the mountains in the Obersalzberg in southern Bavaria, a short distance from the Austrian border, lay once one of the most expensive and significant private building complexes in Europe. It belonged to Nazi Germany's powerful dictator, Adolf Hitler. The residence was known as the Berghof. The Mountain Farm. The first house on the site was put up during the First World War by the wealthy German businessman, Otto Winter, and known as Haus Wachenfeld. Adolf Hitler came to the area for the first time already in 1922, when he took up lodging in a hotel close by. Hitler moved to a neighboring town in 1923 when the hotel changed owners, which Hitler didn't like. We need to fast forward 10 years to 1933 when Hitler had become Chancellor of Germany. At this point he had made a significant amount of money on his book Mein Kampf, which made him wealthy enough to buy Haus Wachenfeld. In the following years Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, was in charge of totally renovating the property. He hired famous architect Alois Degano to draw a completely new house for the site, and Bormann went on to have it built. In addition to the house that we can see on these pictures, Bormann also had an underground tunnel and bunker system made. Barracks for SS soldiers. And later he had the Kelstein House, the Eagle's Nest, built as a birthday present to Hitler from the Nazi Party, all financed with money from wealthy Nazi sympathizers. One of the most famous and most seen parts of the Berghof was the large terrace that we see here from Hitler's mistress Eva Braun's home movies. The terrace was an important area where Hitler met with both top Nazis and other visitors. Here the guests could enjoy a spectacular view of the surrounding mountains and valleys while being shaded from the sun by the large canvas resort-style umbrellas. Hitler's social circle at the Berghof mainly consisted of other top Nazis and their families, including their children, and Eva Braun's family and closest friends. Other frequent guests were Hitler's personal photographer Heinrich Hoffmann and his personal physician Theodor Morell. The residence also contained several living rooms, dining rooms, a library, and even a cinema where Hitler would spend most evenings doing one of his favorite pastimes: watching movies. Both German movies and even Hollywood movies was shown here. Another important part of the Berghof was Hitler's large office, known as the Great Hall. During the Second World War, the Berghof was Hitler's second most used residence. Only the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia, where Hitler would direct the invasion of the Soviet Union, was used more frequently. Therefore, Hitler had to have facilities for both accepting important guests and to take care of the day-to-day business of waging a world war. The room also had a huge window giving Hitler a staggering view of the Alps in his native Austria. The window was the second largest in all of Germany. Only Hermann Göring's residence Kahrenhall outside Berlin had a larger one. Last, but not least, is the stairs and entrance area where Hitler would meet and greet arriving guests. Among the guests he met here and accompanied into the house was former British Prime Minister David Lloyd George, the recently abdicated King Edward VIII of England, now known as the Duke of Windsor, along with his American wife, Wallis Simpson. In February of 1938 he met with Austrian Chancellor Kurt von Schuschnigg. A few weeks later Hitler would invade Austria and incorporate it into the German Reich in what would be known as the Anschluss. Just 2 weeks before the signing of the infamous Munich Agreement, where Great Britain and France would give Hitler the green light to take back the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain also visited the Bavarian retreat to meet with the German Führer. As the Second World War broke out, Hitler would host several meetings, known as Berghof conferences, in his Great Hall office with his top generals, where they would plan various military operations. Most famously the invasion of the Soviet Union. As the tides of the war turned against the Nazis, Hitler was forced to spend more and more time in Berlin and in East Prussia. His last visit to the Berghof ended on July 14, 1944, when Hitler left to go to the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. On the 25th of April, 1945, British Lancaster bombers launched a heavy bombing raid on the Obersalzberg, and at least 2 bombs hit the Berghof, causing severe damage to the house. On May 4, less than a week after Hitler's death, SS troops would set the remains of the building on fire as they were retreating in the face of an American infantry division who came to the ruins hours later. Over the next few days, French and American troops would go through the surviving parts of the house and take souvenirs. After the war, all of Hitler's property was turned over to the state of Bavaria, who demolished the remaining structures on the grounds. Today, the only remains of the Berghof are these concrete foundations and a few walls.